Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
Where did you get that?
Oh, I'll tell you what. This one actually came from the team shop a while back.
The team shop?
It did.
Oh my goodness!
I've had this one for a few years. It's lasted.
Unbelievable. All right. Let's get to a couple of things. I talked with Mike DeCourcy last week. I mean, you're out talking to the janitor. I'm trying to talk to people to get information. I don't understand your approach to the sports.
He observes the game better than anybody, and he's at every spot.
You know what? What gets me is you're probably right. To be honest with you, you're probably absolutely right.
He's at every part of that venue.
Yeah.
Now, if we're upgrading the venue, where are we going? Let me get your input.
Yeah, probably would, But I was talking to Mike DeCourcy a couple weeks ago, and this is after the House versus the NCAA ruling came out. The settlement, I should say. It's a settlement, not a ruling. And the bottom line is that the NCAA, this is on the past payments, is going to reduce payouts for the next 10 years to schools. That's where some of it's going to come from. The NCAA is going to pay for, 40 to 60% of it out of reserves. Then everything else is going to come out of the payouts to the schools. Okay. So how do you now get revenue? They are now looking at, right now the NCAA tournament is a base 64 with 4 teams added for playing games to 68, right? They are now looking at base models of 72 and 76. Now, it would not begin this year, 24-25, but could begin as early as the year after, 25-26. The idea is, and it goes beyond the base contract with TBS, CBS, to kick in some additional revenue, and that's one of the reasons they're going to do it. So in talking to Mike, now this is the part where Mike comes in. Mike DeCourcy said that the one thing that he thought the House settlement did was that it ensured the viability of the NCAA basketball tournament for the next 10 years. Why? Because they need the money from the NCAA basketball tournament to make the past payments. Okay, that's why. And it really was, that was a great way of taking 2 and 2 and having it equal 4. And he's right. The NCAA men's basketball tournament, the women's tournament has nothing to do with this. That's no offense, but it's pennies on the dollar. It's an increase to $65 million a year, but the men's basketball tournament is paying out $770 to a top out of a $1.1 billion. Okay, so that's not all right. Okay, that's why they're just in completely different realms. And so you can get more revenue out of that. The problem, okay, it'll be negated somewhat because you would also have to have play-in games for the women's tournament because of Title IX, I think, in all likelihood. And guess what? Those are going to lose money, right? And I know there's like some fantasy world out there right now about, they're making gazillion dollars because people are watching the games. That's not the case. The WNBA is about to lose $50 million this year. Right? That's not a figure I plucked out of the sky. That was a report put out 3 days ago about, hey, guess what? You're going to lose 50 million. It's the same thing with the women's basketball tournament. For all the awesome success it had with attendance and with viewership, it still lost more money than I think all of the other NCAA championships combined. And that's not a part of this conversation. It's what can you garner from the men's tournament to help offset reduced payments to schools. So that's why they're looking at an increase of two models, 1 to 72, 1 to 76. And that's a big part of what's going on. And we'll see, can you get more money out of somebody to do it? Because they already have contracts with TBS and CBS. I don't know if there's a provision in there for increased payouts if the tournament expands. Because now, of course, you're providing more inventory. Or if you're allowed to then go out and get a supplemental partner that would then take the games. In other words, do you put it on streaming? I don't know. So that's going to be something that takes a long look. Okay. So that's the NCAA basketball tournament story. Then there's the recruiting story. A lot of people felt that the NCAA was going to allow the early signing period, the early signing date to move to the end of June. And for Penn State, that would be, that would work out fine because Penn State, the way they recruit, by the end of June, they pretty much have a pretty good handle on the vast majority of the class. And, boy, I don't know, it's 95 to 98% of the time, it doesn't change. In other words, guys don't decommit, get out. Usually the ones that commit early usually stick.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it would be fine for Penn State if that were to happen. But it sounds like there is a committee that has looked into this. And evidently they're going to recommend keeping it where it is right now, which would be the week between the end of the regular season and the conference championship game, which would be that Wednesday. There are several things that that I think are important here. Number one, the way everything is bottled together right now, you're recruiting during the season, trying to maintain, and you also are concerned about the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. So even putting it the first week, that week between the end of the regular season and the conference championship games, you're now dealing with that and the portal at the same time still. There has to be a point where everybody, from the high school prospect to the college coaching staff, where they get to concentrate on the season. Those who would sign by June 30th, let's just say it's June 30th, we'll pick that date, now can do, good, all right, because you're signed.
Yeah, and you're not worried about it.
You're not
final year of high school.
worried about it, and people aren't circling around you trying to get you to change.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're like, okay, we're all set. I know what my plans are.
Yeah.
And you can play your season. Now, there are others that may opt, especially on the higher end, may opt to say, you know what, I'd like to prolong this. So let's take this to the first Wednesday of February. That's fine. That's your option to do. And by the way, if there's a coaching change, you're allowed to put your name back in there. Yeah, you're allowed to put your name back in there with a coaching change, and you can go into the February signing day. I don't think there's any issue with that at all. But it looks like they're going to push this back. I don't understand what the pushback is on the early signing day. I don't get, because anybody who doesn't want to sign can wait till the first Wednesday of February.
Absolutely.
Men's basketball has made this work for decades now. This is not a recent thing this is not a recent thing, for example, for men's basketball. They've had the early signing period now for decades. And it's the second Wednesday of November. Now, does that bleed in now into the first week of the season? Penn State's going to open on Monday, November 4th. And the signing date would be what? Wednesday the 14th?
14th, 13th, 14th.
Something
13th,
like that. Wednesday the 14th, I think.
Yep. I think we're at a point now, and you talked about it, 80 to 90%, and being that number. I think we're at a point now where, with enrollment being early, and this wasn't the case, 15 years ago. It is now, where enrollment is early. So a lot of the post-high school games are done. So I think you're at the point now, you're going into that final year, and I think a lot of people do have a good feel of where they're going. I don't think there's any question about that. I think they are leaning one way or another. And again, if you're indecisive, you have till February to decide. But the early signing period, I think, gives the advantage. Number one, it's an equal. It's pretty much equal. I think it helps, obviously, the school, as you said, because the portal is now as intense and extensive as it's ever been. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You're essentially looking at free agency now when it comes to college sports. We weren't looking at that 10 years ago. You're also looking at a lot of holes in your roster for other reasons that you're trying to fill. And as the student, the reasons we just said, you're going into your final year. You're going to be, if you're not deciding where you're going to go, you're going to be scrutinized heavily. Yeah. There are a million ways to recruit people now that were not the case in 2005 even. So you ease that burden a little bit by giving them the chance to commit. Again, you're giving them the chance. You're not saying, hey, sign by June. You're giving them the chance.
Right.
Which I think a lot of people are going to take advantage of, and it's going to benefit both parties. I don't understand at all why we have to push it to December, especially now. Prior to NIL, I was okay with December. Prior to the portal being as extensive as it's now become, I was fine with December.
Right.
At this point now, you've got to move it. There's too many obstacles that a school has to overcome, that a coach has to overcome.
Yeah. In
that spot now.
It's just too much.
Way too much.
It's too much all at once. You have an expanded playoff.
Yeah, and that's taking you till January 20th now.
The expanded playoff puts more coaches in a position where they're actually getting ready for a playoff game.
Literally.
All right. Now, to the credit of, let's give Georgia and Alabama credit. They've been in the playoff thing repeatedly, and they've handled it fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, but it takes a lot.
There's no question
of organization to make it happen. This is where a guy like Andy Frank comes in. He's so good at the organization part of it as a general manager. But the June signing date, I don't understand why because Pete Thamel's the one that put it out. He said the Collegiate Commissioners Association took a straw vote yesterday and that voted down a June signing period of college football. They're expected to confirm that notion today. That leaves 2 signing periods, February and the week prior to the conference title games. I'm sorry, that's archaic.
Yeah,
That is archaic. And I've talked about this early signing date for years. Now, I'm not in the same look. Sean Fitz, Ryan Snyder, right? Tyler Donahue, all these people who do great, great work on recruiting have a better feel for this than I do, but my feel for it comes from the common sense part of it. I've watched basketball do it for years. Yes, are there players that sign in the late signing period? Sure there are, that sign in April. But the vast majority of players in college basketball sign in November.
Mm-hmm.
Are there unintended consequences?
Absolutely.
Sure. Spike Albrecht was one of those unintended consequences with Michigan. If you recall, he scored 17 in the first half in the national championship game against Louisville a few years back. Well, Spike comes back his senior year, the whole thing, and after the signing date, he hurts his hip. And he's out for the rest of the year. He played 8 games. Bless you. He played 8 games. Well, that meant he was eligible for a medical redshirt. Except John Beilein, who was the head coach at that point, they'd already filled the recruiting class, including his scholarship, because he was expected to play the whole year. So he ended up transferring and played his last year at Purdue. Okay, that's an unintended consequence, but extremely rare.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often.
All right. It's worked in basketball for years. I don't get this.
I don't either.
I don't get this. I realized calendars mean something. In other words, the NBA calendar for college prospects is exponentially better than the NFL calendar. The NFL calendar, you put your name in, you can't withdraw it.
Mm-hmm.
The NBA calendar, you're allowed to put your name in, work out till about, 2.5 to 3 weeks before the draft, about 2.5 weeks before. Then there's decision day. So I think it's 3 weeks before. You've gone to combines, you worked out for individual teams. You could pull your name out. Coleman Hawkins just did that. I'm pulling my name out, and I'm transferring away from Illinois and going to Kansas State. Okay. Just so you know, they claim the number was 1.2 million.
Yeah. No.
It is less. I'll leave it at that. We know people.
Hawkins was a good player.
Hawkins is a...
He's not a top, draft pick. He's superstar-like player, but he's an effective player.
Hawkins is a good passer for a big man. A decent outside shooter, decent rebounder, and defensively would struggle to guard you. Okay, so, right?
Probably. I agree. Yeah, I don't think there's any question.
I've done a lot of Coleman Hawkins games. Like, okay, where is he?
Yep.
Strange world out there.
Yep, and that's not going to cut it in the NBA.
Right. But
we're in an era now where
but I'm saying though, but that's what he did. He took the process. He was smart about it.
Yeah,
he did the individual workouts. He did the combine. I think he was part of the Chicago combine. It was not the G League combine. He did the NBA last year. He did the G League combine.
G League, yep.
This year he did the NBA combine, and then he worked out for individual teams. Took all the info. Figured out, hey, look, I'm not going to be a first-round pick. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure he was told that. Hey, look, you're a second-round free agent. Right? And then said, hey, I'm going back one more year to school, transferred out, went to Kansas State. Okay. But that's how that process works. The college football process, 1 week after the national championship game, you have to declare. Once you declare, you're done.
You're done. Yep.
Okay? You can declare for the draft. Let's say, for example, said player declares for the draft a week before the bowl game. Or let's say that we're in the playoff, okay? And I don't expect. Okay?
If that happens, we're in trouble.
No. Guy declares for the draft. I'm declaring for the draft, but you play the playoff.
Play the bowl game. Yeah, playoff game. Yeah.
Right. And you do that, and then you sit there, and the week after the championship game, you're like, okay, I decided, you know what, I should stay another year. You can do that. You can withdraw your name. And the next part is, because the championship game is going to be January 20th, does the declaration date move back to January 27th?
Should.
That's something that I haven't heard anybody talk about yet, and that may be because I missed it. But here's the problem that they claim that they have. Ross Dellinger put this out. The commissioners say they surveyed high school coaches and the High School Coaches Association. Most of them expressed feedback against a June period. I don't understand why.
I don't either.
I don't understand that.
It doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense. That's not serving the high school player well. No. What you want everybody crawling around your place on Friday nights?
Yeah.
Right? And the SEC has been public that it is against the June signing date. There's your issue right there.
Mm-hmm.
The SEC is against it. It lacks common sense. And that bothers me. It's something that should be on the table. Why does it work for college basketball over and over again? Okay? Now, as for the expansion of the NCAA men's basketball tournament, as you know, I think Greg Sankey chaired this committee. Remember, they came out with that idea, not a proposal, but the idea that 25% of all schools should be eligible for NCAA championships. Okay, that was a blanket across the board.
That was not a proposal. 25, it was basically a thought. Yeah.
Right. Well, but they openly talked about it. That's what they recommended.
Yes.
And so, in other words, that'd be 25% of women's lacrosse programs, 25% of men's lacrosse programs, 25% of women's soccer programs, and yes, 25% of men's basketball programs. Now, if you're talking 25% of men's and women's basketball programs, that's a 90-team tournament. Because right now there are 363 Division I programs. That's 90 teams. Okay. And the idea of 72 to 76, especially in this era where you need money, and maybe you can talk to TV partners about the extra games, has some logic to it. So let's get into the logic of it. First of all, we all know that 64 works.
Sure.
It's been dynamic.
64, 68, yeah.
Well, I 64, because I have to get through the first couple of the ideas to get to 64. Okay.
Yep.
The play-in games in Dayton in the expansion to 68 have actually, to their credit, been popular, and to the credit of Dayton, they have been a tremendous host. Not a good host. They've been a tremendous host. So 68, with this format to quickly whittle down to 64, works. But different times bring with it different reasons. You are now in a time where the Power 5 schools, and I have to now, well, let's say Power 4, the Big East makes it Power 5 in basketball, but there's no way the Big East schools can pay $22 million. That's where the 22% comes in for them. I mean, Villanova's not going to do that. Villanova, Georgetown, St. John's. I mean, they're not going to. They can't afford to do that. They'd be bankrupt. So the Power 4 schools each have to come up with the $22 million. Big East has to come up with whatever number works for their particular school within the confines of the House settlement. But everybody is going to get a reduced payment from the NCAA tournament pool because of the settlement, because of the back pay. Okay. So how do you make up for it? And they feel this is the way to make up for it. So and they have two models on the table, one for 72, one for 76. I'm always of the thought process, if the proposals were on the table were 90 and 72, let's just say it was 90 and 72, or let's say 76 and 72. So let's go with the bigger number. 76 and 72. I'm sorry. 76 and 90. I would take 76, the lower number. But if the proposal's for 72 or 76, I would take 76. And here's the reason why. Like, well, why would you take the lower number if it's one versus the other, but take the higher number in this one? And the reason that I would take the lower numbers is 90's too many. Okay? Let's flip it to the other side. Okay, so now I've got to do something here, and I'm looking for more revenue. Right? Well, this time I take the higher number between 72 and 76. You might as well just go for it and do it now. That's my attitude about it. And not that it helps out Penn State or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that. Zero. In other words, if you've got 72 and 76 on the table, just take the higher number now. Right? Just do that. If it were 76 and 90, I'd say 76. 90's too many.
Mm-hmm. No question.
I mean, that's why I've talked about with the college football playoff. Yeah, it's 12. Hey, let's go to 14. Just go to 16. And just do it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And get it over with. And I think that if the 22 million and it's the back pay number, it's not the 22 million. If the back pay number were not an issue, then I would say there's no way you should go past 68. No way. But it is an issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And it's not this is not just an issue for Penn State, Ohio State, USC, Alabama, for the Power Four. That's not the issue. Okay? They can work around that, even though it does, it hurts. It's the Bucknells of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For all those Patriot League teams, St. Francis down in Loretto in the Northeast Conference, okay, the Coastal Carolinas, that's a big part of what they get. And especially for school, let's go back to the Big East. Nobody in the Big East has Division 1A football. Nobody has FBS football in the Big East. Right? Nobody.
Right.
Not one of them. Except for UConn. UConn does. It's kind of a loose definition.
Yeah.
UConn's the only Big East school that has the FBS football, right? I don't think anybody else does.
I believe so.
Right. Okay? And UConn's independent. They depend on that NCAA distribution. Now, if you're reducing that NCAA distribution, even if it's just a little bit, athletic directors are doing 5-year plans and so forth, and they're coming around the 3 to 5 year plan. They were counting on having, the distribution instead of having it cut a little bit. Well, that hurts. So, in the world of the Big East, the Northeast Conference, the Patriot, the Ivy League, right? We can go through the whole long list of them. The Ohio Valley Conference, the Summit, the Horizon, right? They're all going to get slightly less unless there is a revenue stream to make up for it. How do you do it? Well, you can take the NCAA men's basketball tournament and you can expand it. With the idea you can get some TV revenue to at least make a dent that could at least reduce the burden on NCAA distribution to schools. It's an idea. It's an idea. And it's something that I think is worthy of discussion.
Absolutely.
Because you have to come up with ways of doing it. When we're talking about logos on the field, which is, getting the thumbs up. Now they should improve them for the jerseys too, but that's just me.
The difference is the logos on the field. Everybody's going to see. Everybody's in the stands going to see it. Everybody on the TV is going to see it.
Right.
And that's I think why they're going to jump at that first. But the logos.
Again, they should have done the whole thing at once. Just get it out of the way now.
Yeah.
Okay? It's already been proven in pro sports what they're doing with it. Okay? And I'm not talking about suddenly out of nowhere you're watching an Alabama game and across the Alabama jersey there's no number. It says Fly Emirates.
No.
Okay. It's like, I don't think so.
No, not quite.
It's going to be more the look of the NBA Finals of where the Dallas Mavericks are Chime and the Celtics are Vistaprint. The Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers, both subtle. Everything's subtle. The Yankees have an insurance company, Star Insurance, on their sleeves.
Yep.
The Pirates have nothing.
And you give credit to the Yankees. Obviously, they made fun. If you go back to Major League 2, they make fun of Roger doing the redecorating around the field. And the Yankees are really the first to have done that. They put the W.B. Mason back in left field. Now you're seeing it everywhere. Right. You're seeing advertisements on the walls.
Look at the green monster at Fenway Park.
Doubt.
I mean, come on.
There's no doubt.
Well, no, but they did that years ago. Okay, I'll give you an example. This is not something that never happened before. Okay, look at pictures of Fenway Park, Green Monster.
Sure.
In the 30s, I think it was in the 40s. Gem blades.
Absolutely.
Big gem blades picture on the wall. Okay, because Tom Yawkey needed the money to pay Dom DiMaggio. No, I'm just saying to pay Ted Williams. Right? But Gem Blades was on the wall. Okay? That was in the 40s.
Yeah.
Now, who knows what's up there? I'd have to go see it for myself. But oh well. We're just in that era where I know we talk so often about money in the show, but you've got to come up with revenue streams to do this because everything's changed. And again, everything has changed because it's been mandated by courts.
Absolutely.
Right? This isn't an option here. Now, if they didn't settle, they'd have gone to court and in all likelihood were probably on the path to losing, which would have tripled the number. So this is the best they could come up with. And you have to come up with different ways of doing it. Now, here's going to be an interesting one. Remember, there's that new postseason tournament for 16 teams in Las Vegas. 2 Big Ten teams are supposed to be in it. And they're going to pay them. Fox is running the thing. What does that do to the NIT?
Uh-huh.
The NIT, the NIT is run by the NCAA, but you had a bunch of teams turn it down last year.
Yeah, I was going to say it's
St. John's turned it down last year.
But it's declined.
St. John's turned it down last year. Indiana turned it down last year. They were so concerned about the number of schools that could potentially turn it down, that Penn State at 16 and 17 was contacted by the NIT last year and asked, hey, look, if it gets to it, would you play? Penn State told them they would play. All right. But they were worried last year.
Absolutely.
And with St., because I don't think I've heard of anybody turning down the NIT since Al McGuire and Marquette did it in 1970. They turned down, no, they didn't turn down the NIT. They turned down the NCAA tournament. And they played in the NIT. And Marquette won it. And that's when they put in the rule, like, hey, you're selected for the NCAA, you're playing. Right? They changed the rule because McGuire did that. We're going to play in the NIT. You're going to do what? And they won it. Because remember, McGuire was from New York. Yeah. Right? Like, okay. And back then, you played all the games at Madison Square Garden, like all of them. But this is, we talk a lot about money because guess what? You need it.
You need it. It drops everything. Absolutely.
Yeah, but you need it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole thing. All right. If it wasn't necessary, okay, we wouldn't talk so much about it. But now it's necessary. Okay? This settlement means that you're going to have your NCAA distribution like slightly cut back for the next 10 years. And when the NCAA tournament was not played in 2020, athletic departments across the board, across the country, took a big hit. And I remember talking to coaches of other sports on campus. Right? All saying, says, yeah, we're all have to get by because we can get we're all going to have to make do with less. This is in the 2021 year. We're going to have to make do with less. And they all said this to me consistently because the NCAA distribution was less. Yep. All right. So that's why you've got to sit back and take a long look at where can I get revenue as the NCAA to make up for the settlement. And one of the possibilities is a slight expansion of the NCAA basketball tournament. Slight is 72.
Yeah.
A little bit more is 76. Yeah. And that's why to me, you know what? I would gauge the TV situation.
Yeah.
And if 76 definitely gets me more money, I do that. I don't go past 76.
Not right now, no.
Yeah, but I don't go past 76 anyway.
No.
Okay? The number of schools playing Division I basketball is not going to balloon to 400. No. Okay? It's not going to balloon to 400.
No.
It may go at some point to like 365 to 370, maybe. But we're really, the number of schools playing men's and women's basketball right now is kind of the area where you can maybe pick up one here or there. We all know about the Merrimack situation because they weren't allowed to go, even though they won they won their tournament and the whole thing. Was it Tarleton State was another one that did really well?
Yeah. I think it was Tarleton State. Yeah.
Yeah, Tarleton State.
Yeah, Tarleton. Yeah.
With a T.
T. Yeah.
Yeah. Which classes did you take in college?
Not the right one.
Oh, golly. So that's why they at least need to look at it. That doesn't mean they should do it, but they need to look at it. I mean, what ways can you come up with that can at least see? This isn't a case of, oh, let's get more greed, let's get more money into everybody's pockets, the whole thing. You're now trying to make up for a mandated loss.
Sure.
See, that's the problem here. The settlement mandates a loss. So now you're trying to at least break even if you can for everybody. And that's why it's something that really does need a long, hard look.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, and you look at the examples of what you just said of the teams that didn't make it. Tarleton State being one of them, where
well, no, but I'm looking at
where,
them as somebody who, by the way, jumped, just jumped in,
made the jump.
In other words, it's gone from like 361 to 2 to 3. It's like one every year. It seems. So Matt Norlander confirmed through multiple sources that they are looking at this. He's with CBS Sports. If passed, the NCAA's plans for tournament expansion would take effect, as I said, 25-26. According to Yahoo Sports, the presented changes would keep the core 64-team bracket intact, adding additional play-in games and at least one more first four site. Expansion to the women's tournament could follow suit. Tournament field went to 68 from 65 in 2011. It went from 64 to 65 in 2001. The alteration to the event's core bracket came in 85 when we went from 53 up to 64. We all know that. Additional tournament games would be a way to increase revenue as schools seek to offset financial costs of the House versus NCAA decision. Realignment also comes into play. Big 12, ACC, SEC, Big 10, all adding teams. Those conferences will have fewer at-large bids to share under the current structure. Okay, it's true, because the only one that loses an automatic bid in all this is the Pac-12. Because remember, Washington State and Oregon State are going to play in the WCC for basketball. Yeah. So you've got everybody grouped in there, and you still have all these automatic bids. The tournament is one of the greatest spectacles in sports, said Brett Yormark. Now, I'll say this. Yormark is somebody who does think outside the box. I give him a lot of credit. He's always looking and probing. He's got the number 3 conference, and it's number 3 by a wide margin in terms of how far down they are. He said, and Yormark, by the way, has really thrown himself into committing that he thinks basketball can be a moneymaker in the Big 12. And look, he's got Kansas in there. He's got all sorts of teams. Well, right? They brought in Utah's good. Arizona's great. They're coming in. Colorado's very good. Right? It captivates hardcore fans, casual fans for all the right reasons. He's correct. You don't want to mess with something that's great, but there are chances and opportunities to modify it a little bit, to maybe provide more access, to amplify the experience, to look at it slightly differently. Those are his words. We owe it to ourselves to do that. I'm a firm believer that from time to time you got to put things through an audit. As great as they may look, it makes sense to do that and go through the exercise. And he's right. He's absolutely right. And look, the audit he is correct about the at-large bid part of it, because only one automatic bid decreased in realignment. Pac-12. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So there's only one fewer automatic bid. The number of automatic bids, right, versus at-large bids. I think the at-large bids are going to go from 37 to 38. Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, the Big Ten, no offense, the Big Ten could get as many as 9 or 10 teams in with the teams that they have. Right?
Sure.
Would the Big Ten get 6 last year?
Yeah.
They could get 9, 8 or 9 out of this. Well, where are they going to come from? Who are you taking them from? The Big 12 is going to be 16 teams. The SEC is going to be 16 teams. The Big 10 is going to be 18 teams.
Yeah.
And what's the ACC? 18? 19 with Notre Dame? 17, 18, 17, and Notre Dame makes 18? I think it
is 18. Yeah.
Right. Well, where are you going to get the at-large bids from? Because you're taking all those Pac-12 teams and you're grouping them into, you're taking 10 Pac-12 teams. Now, the Pac-12 had, 3 bids last year?
Yep.
3? Arizona, Oregon, and who was the other one? Colorado.
Colorado was there, right?
Colorado. Tad Boyle got his team in. So you had 3 last year. Well, you lose 1 automatic bid, so that would have been 2. Well, those 2 would they have made the tournament in the expansion? Now Arizona as an at-large would have made it. So, but they had who had the automatic bid? Oregon. Oregon had the automatic
I think it was
bid.
Oregon. Yeah.
Right. Oregon, say they wouldn't not win the Big Ten championship. Would they have been an at-large team? Right. No matter what, Arizona going over the Big 12 would have been in. Colorado was an at-large team already, so and now they're playing different. They'd also be playing a different schedule now compared to that because now you got to be play Texas Tech, Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Baylor, right? So you do have to play a different schedule besides the people you can still play Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, things like that, but. UCS, Cincinnati, Houston. Yeah, you got to play Houston now. Great team. Cincinnati, UCF.
Cincinnati 25 years ago, maybe.
BYU, pretty good. BYU made the tournament.
Yeah.
They made the tournament.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah. I mean, defensively, they're really good.
Yeah.
Offensively, I wouldn't buy a ticket to watch that team play offense. No, ever. But you lose 1 automatic bid, and the question would be, of the 3 Pac-12 teams, who wouldn't have made it? Probably Oregon.
Yeah, of those 3, absolutely.
Right? But you'd have to lose 1 more someplace else. Who is it? Okay, somewhere among those 4 conferences, one more at-large bid would have to be lost. I'm just using last year's tournament as a guide for this. And that's something that with realignment, that's what they're looking at. But the key is you have to talk to the TV partners. I have to talk to CBS, TBS, TNT, and so forth. Or do I have the option of going to Amazon Prime, as an example, and streaming the play-in games for a fee? And in turn, is it enough to make a significant dent in the payout structure of the House settlement? So this is where we are. I mean, we're at that quiet period right now where I think they've made Southern high school coaches, by the way, are the ones that are against it's the Southern high school coaches that are against it, and the SEC is against the early signing period. I don't get it. Just look at these people and go, you know what, tough. That's what we're going to do. Why? You want to know why? Because it makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah.
It makes sense for the kid. It makes sense for the schools. It makes sense for the coaching staffs. It makes sense for everybody across the board. It just makes sense, right? Okay, you can't have everything you want in life. We're going to do what makes sense. June 30th makes sense. Okay? What, you want your players to go through and high school coaches. It's nice that they're trying to cultivate your players, but over and over again, they can't enjoy their senior year. College basketball players high school basketball players that want to play Division I basketball get a chance to enjoy their senior season because they already signed in November. They're done. It's worked for decades. You already have a model that has worked for decades. And I realize the calendar comes into play. I've got that part. But why has it worked in college basketball? And college football can't figure it out. I don't get that part. You already have a model that works. That is shown over and over and over again. If you get the thing done before the season starts, remember, it's before the season starts.
Yep.
I mean, this would be the equivalent. This is the equivalent Okay? Let's put the early signing date between the conference championship games and the NCAA tournament. That's what this is the equivalent of. This is what they're doing. Let's put the early, not the late, the early signing period in college basketball between the conference championship games. Oh, no, the end of the regular season and the conference championship games.
Title games, yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
We're going to put, it'll be the first Wednesday in March 7th.
Yeah.
What? That's when that's the bet. That's the equivalent. We're going to do the early signing period in college basketball between the last regular season game and the conference tournaments. That's what the equivalent of what they're doing in football now. At that point, you're looking at everybody saying, has everybody taken stupid pills?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what college football's doing.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. College basketball's already giving you the blueprint. Do it early. Let them enjoy their season. Allows you to coach your team. Before they had the early signing date, I'd be going to practices and it would always be something like, okay, which coaches are here today? This is college basketball. All right, Brian Hill's not here. He must be out recruiting. Jerry Dunn's not here today. He must be out recruiting. Ed DeChellis isn't here today. He must be out recruiting. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's what happened. Yeah, they're out recruiting, whatever. Okay. Now you go to practice. Oh, sure, once in a great while is what. You always want to at least always go to make sure you're staying in contact with guys along the way because that's important. Once you recruit them and you sign them, you don't ever forget about them. You keep going and seeing and talking with them all the time. So that's important. There are also guys you're still looking at along the way, but you're looking at them trying to cultivate the relationship with the idea that, hey, look, when you see me show up at your AAU games, in July, right, or your other AAU games or whatever it happens to be, I'm a familiar face. Okay. But there's not the pressure of, like, got to sign these guys. Okay. That pressure is for a different time. College basketball has made it work for decades. You already have the model in place. I realize the time of the year does make a difference. I talked about the NBA draft versus the NFL draft and about the ability to pull your name out because the time of the year makes it easier to do all that, okay, as opposed to college football. I understand that part. Okay? But I'm sitting there and I have the ability to sign somebody June 30th that's absolutely committed to me and I'm committed to them. Let them do it. I don't understand what the high school coaches in the South are upset about. The SEC, I think they're just going along with the high school coaches. But it makes no sense. It makes zero sense. College football, right? College basketball's late signing period's in April. Okay. The first day of it goes from April into May. College football, same thing. First Wednesday of February. Well, guess what both have in common? Each time the season's over. It's when the early signing date is. The early signing date, you're sitting there, okay? Second Wednesday in November. Done.
Mm-hmm.
And not all, but almost everybody that's going to play Division I basketball, I'm talking about Power 5 basketball, signs in November. And guess what? As a coaching staff, you're like, okay. You're always thinking 3 years ahead anyway. But you're like, okay, done, got that. Let's make sure we stay in contact, continue to hey, we care, we love you, the whole deal. We want you, But you're signed. And you can coach your team. Novel concept. You can coach your team. Not college football. No. Imagine college basketball coaches going, okay, can't wait for that Wednesday after the regular season ends and before the conference tournament begins. Let's have a signing day. By pointing that out, that shows you how absurd this is. It's absurd.
Agreed.
Why do you listen to these people? Just like, yeah, whatever. We're just going to do it because it's the right thing to do. There's a second signing day.
Exactly.
It's not like they're saying,
it's not as if it's an early signing period.
Right.
That's exactly the
point. It's an early signing day, and that's the definition of an early signing day.
Yeah.
And guess what? Coaches in July, the first 2 weeks of July, get to do what? Go on vacation
and enjoy it before
with
the
their
starts.
families.
Yeah.
With their families. And high school kids get to go on vacation with their families. Really? Novel concept.
Makes too much sense.
Again, it is what college football is doing right now is the equivalent of putting the early signing date in between the last game of the regular season and the first game of the conference tournament. That's what college football is doing. The signing date, the early day, has been moved back. Ooh, big move from the Wednesday before Christmas, essentially, right? Which it was last year. Was it the 22nd last year? Something
Literally.
like that.
Literally.
All right. And we're going to move it to between the end of the regular season and the conference championship game. Like, okay, fine. Okay. You have a late signing date for people who don't want to sign early, which is the first Wednesday of February. You have a late signing date that if there's a coaching change that allows people to get out of their letter of intent and put their name back into the pool. You already have these provisions in place. Why don't you do something that is best for many, including the athlete? Now, if the athlete's sitting there in the early signing period and doesn't want to sign, okay, that's why they created February. It's like in basketball. I didn't want to sign early. I signed late. Okay, then there are a couple guys, 5 stars that wait until the April signing date to sign. Okay, it's fine. I see this stuff and I say, I got to give college football credit. They have perfected for every 2 steps forward, they have the ability to take 1 step back. They have perfected it.
I go one further. I think it's 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Well, the game is more popular than ever.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
And I think the game is better than ever.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The athletes that are out there and so forth. Now, you can debate the people covering it. But, No. Wasn't the right way to go. That was really one of your best shows.
It's the effort that counts.
I don't think I would have gone there if I were you. Well, I'll be back tomorrow.